Georgia with their first practice of the spring in the books. Dean Legge, Matt DeBary here talking about the Dawgs. Again here on Dog Post and riding home, another edition here. Matt, yesterday we were recording this after Pro Day, and there's a lot of guys that are missing, as Kirby talked about on Tuesday. But the group that's there looks solid. It's hard to draw a lot out of the first practice of a spring.
Yeah.
Because so much of the team that's going to be in there fall is not there now. But guys like Nolan Smith looked really good. Obviously, you had a different quarterback situation with Stetson as what looked like the backup, at least for now, behind Jake Fromm. And there's not always a ton to drag out of spring ball, but we started yesterday with some pieces missing. Not on the offensive line, though, and other places. What were your overall thoughts at the beginning of this one?
Well, they gave us 2 short periods to watch. So the first few minutes, I watched a little bit of the quarterbacks and the receivers. Obviously, Jake Fromm leading the way at the quarterback. Dwan Mathis kind of looks the part. He's got some length to him. He's a tall kid. If he continues to develop and put on some weight, he can really help the team at some point if they need him to.
He doesn't throw as nice a ball as the other 2 quarterbacks.
No, I thought he had some zip on it and nice timing, but there were simple slant routes and out routes. It was nothing spectacular, but he does kind of have a weird angle and release to him.
Yeah, he's tall.
He is tall, but definitely still has to be developed and worked on. But size-wise, he's got it as long as he keeps hitting the weight room and keeps putting on weight. But
he's very long.
He's long and thin.
I wonder, in terms of quarterbacks, long is not always ideal because you want the ball out.
Right. So he does take him a little bit longer.
But tall is ideal. It's hard to be tall and have short hands.
Exactly.
Short arms.
It was easy to notice him, though.
Yeah.
For sure.
You could not miss him.
At the receiver position, Jeremiah Holloman is really taking that leadership role and becoming the guy. If he wasn't, the number one guy heading into the spring, it sure looked like he was the best receiver out there yesterday and the more vocal leader, too. He was coaching up some guys.
And he might not be the best receiver in the fall.
Right, he might not, but he looked good. He was the first guy in the drills. You could tell he was taking that role as a leader. Demetrius Robertson was, too. He was another guy first in line, going through reps. It looked okay. Tommy Bush, easy to notice with his height and length. Matt Landers. Mm-hmm. You see him and you're like, oh, man, who is this guy?
They really have lost a lot at receiver.
Right. And you remember, it's Matt Landers from a few years ago.
And the tight ends, there's just not that many of them over there.
Yeah, it looks like they're probably going to have to play Brett Seether, the kid from Orlando. Tampa, correct. Probably more than they anticipated.
Yeah.
But he's a really good player, too. But John Fitzpatrick was out there. He looks like he's put on weight, which he needed to. He was long and thin when he got to Athens. So
Nolan Smith.
Nolan Smith, though. And Jermaine Johnson at that outside linebacker spot. They both looked good, just walking up to him. Britton Cox looks really bigger. Good. Looks bigger and thicker. He stood out immediately. But, number 4 had it was easy to figure out who he was. I wasn't sure at first.
I'm just not sure that this defense has in 2017 they had DeAndre Baker, who was really good, but Roquan was the guy that everybody talked about. I'm not sure that they have a first-round draft pick that's obvious coming into the spring. Jordan Davis is really good. Tyler Clark. They have a lot
on the defensive line?
Well, on the defense. On the offense, I think they do have first-round picks. Right. But
so next year on defense.
I just say that now. It's the Ides of March here, and I do wonder if over the next 6 months, when you roll into September, no one thought Jonathan. I saw Jonathan Davis play live. He was okay.
Jordan Davis
play live. He was okay. Zamir White was the best player in that game. It wasn't even close.
He's the best player you've ever seen.
In a high school game. Yeah. But my point kind of is right now,
young talent on
defense. Yeah, and they're not. And Azeez Ojulari stuck out to you.
Yeah,
he changed his number.
He's at 13. Looks like he's not as tall as Jonathan Ledbetter.
Adam Anderson changed his. Adam Anderson is the guy that they need to I mean, he can really play,
Yeah.
but the question is, does he know what he's doing all the time? And then you've got Quay Walker, you've got
He was with the inside linebackers because I didn't see him in that group.
well, and you've also got David Wilson. You've got so all these guys that didn't play a lot, now they're going to play a lot, and they will be replacing guys who were pretty steady with Jonathan Ledbetter, with DeAndre Baker, obviously.
Yeah.
So you do lose some pretty good players on defense, but there's no one coming back. Like J.R. Reed is not going to be a first-round draft pick. He's going to be a really good college player, but he's not going to be a first-round draft pick. Richard LeCount, like Richard and J.R. played a lot of games for Georgia and started a lot of games now.
They're veterans now.
But are they superstars? No. My point in saying all of that is maybe they don't have a weakness on defense necessarily. I mean, what is the weakness, Matt?
The weakness.
What is the weakness of this team now? Tight ends? Are we really talking about tight ends being a weakness?
I don't want to say wide receivers a weakness, but that's their biggest drop off for sure.
Yeah, but you go. Yeah. I agree, but you go and get either, depending on who you're talking about, 1 or 2 5-star players to replace them. Yeah. So one of those 5-star receivers, Dominic Blaylock or the kid from Alabama, George.
They're both playing.
Right. Well, they at least one of them should really be good.
Yeah.
If not both.
Yeah.
I mean, how many 5-star receivers have they had? Terry? And Robertson.
Get it out. There you go. There you go.
I'm just trying so hard.
I guess Mecole was a 5-star, but athlete.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Moved to receiver. But if going back to the weaknesses, it's not the defensive line because you've got experience there.
Right.
Tyler Clark, David Marshall, Jordan Davis, Julian Rochester. They're actually adding quality depth, especially with this 2019 class.
And Rochester didn't practice yesterday.
Right.
I mean, so that was
But he's a veteran guy who is healthy. He's not a superstar, but he's a guy who can plug some gaps for you.
It would be helpful if he played better, though.
It would.
I mean, I think he's been good, but he's not been like Jonathan Ledbetter's had a better career than Rochester.
Rochester is pushed around here and there, especially when he's double teamed.
But if he's your backup nose or he's your would he ever play in? I mean, there are situations where it's possible, I guess.
3rd and 1, 4th and 1. You want all the beef up there. He'll probably place him in.
They didn't kind of what Georgia's going through this spring is what it's going to be.
Yeah.
Where you could lose Nick and Sony, and guys like that are or Roquan. I mean, that did hurt them, I guess, last year. But it didn't hurt them so much that they certainly lost a game because Nick and Sony didn't play.
Last year, it's not like Georgia racked up a ton of sacks. So I would say at outside linebacker, Walter Grant's not a pass rusher. He's an experienced guy.
Trayvon Walker wasn't out there either. And Trayvon will be a guy that plays. He's a top 6 defensive lineman for Georgia. Nolan Smith.
But you still have Brenton Cox there.
You have Walter Grant. You have Cox. You have
Robert Beal was with them too.
Robert Beal was with them and has had good moments at times.
He has had
moments. But it will be about this spring really for this. We've talked a lot about the defense, I think with good reason, because if there's transition on this team, it is the defense. I mean, you have the same quarterback. We know who the quarterback's going to be. We probably know the offensive line. The wide receivers, we know who the 2 of the starters will probably be. At running back, I mean, so nothing is really new for this program on the offensive side of the ball. We know the specialists.
It's going to be interesting to see who wins those spots outside linebacker, and you're going to switch guys coming in.
The Georgia team that's coming back in 2019 is going to be very similar to the 2018 team. I'm not sure you can say that about Clemson. Alabama, you're missing that really good defensive lineman. And Ohio State, you're missing a head coach that was there. Maybe Texas and Georgia are a little undervalued nationally versus what they could be in 2019.
Well, I think Ohio State's going to average 40 points again, but it's their defense that they're going to have to really fix if they want to make a playoff run.
You can't lose to Purdue by 30,
right? Which
means you allowed a ton of points.
They have to improve on defense, but they're going to line up the scoreboard again next year, I think, especially with
And we know where the bodies are buried with Georgia. I know where one body is buried at Ohio State, which is they have a quarterback that's going to come up there who's really gifted, who's never started a game.
Yeah.
So that's problematic for Ohio State because eventually they will get challenged by someone, you would think.
He's going to make some incredible plays. He's going to make some dumb ones again, like he did in
at Clemson. They could score. They maybe could average 50 points a game, but will their defense be there when they need them to be there? Because they're only going to get challenged so often.
Like Georgia, they've got a lot of young talent on defense. I don't think it's as much talent as Georgia's bringing in on defense. The sophomores and freshmen that Georgia has on defense is, that's an elite group.
Clemson's offense is spectacular, and they're
not a single ACC defense is going to be able to stop them.
So I don't think Texas A&M can hang with them, and I don't think South Carolina can. So in the only non-conference games that matter, they should be in good shape. But for Georgia, we mentioned those other schools. Maybe Texas would be in there, or Oklahoma. They got transition at quarterback too.
I guess Texas has deserved it.
I think they do now, but I don't know how many of those guys that played in the Sugar Bowl who really played well are gone. I don't know. For Georgia, basically, the team, the bones of the team from last year are back, and it's Georgia's. When we talk about Clemson's offense, Georgia scored a ton of points on offense too. Now, when you look out there, though, you see the offensive line. It's hard to. That's probably the best offensive line in the country. Georgia's.
It's never good to lose a center, especially one who started multiple years. Yeah. But we heard yesterday Trey Hill is a guy who could step in, and we might not see drop off at all.
Clay Webb, in theory, could be your starter.
I love Clay Webb.
Yeah.
Jamari Sawyer.
You have a ton of options if you're Georgia at the center spot. But I just look at the grand scheme of things. The biggest concern is you lost DeAndre Baker, which gave you a lot of ability. No one scored a touchdown on him for 2 years. And then you've got, after that, you're filling in dots. There's no big gaping holes on this team. You don't want your quarterback to get hurt. But what I would argue there is, if you're Clemson and your quarterback gets hurt, are you going to go undefeated? Probably, I guess. But the margin forever drops down pretty low. Same thing for Alabama, Oklahoma, Texas. Everybody now, there's no programs that have backup quarterbacks anymore. No. That's gone.
It completely gone.
So that's for everyone anymore.
You're going to have to find a diamond in the rough and hold on to him as your backup quarterback from now
on. Well, you would like someone like Stetson Bennett if you can do that. But you've got now, for the second year in a row, two of the last 3 years, Georgia's had 3 scholarship kids, which is not ideal. Yeah. Last year they had 2, which is really bad.
The 5 and 4-star quarterbacks are not going to stick around 2 or 3 years.
Not with the new rules.
Right. The DJ Shockleys are over, though. I don't think anyone would have blamed him if he decided to transfer and sit a year and do something else. But those days are gone. But Georgia's got themselves a great quarterback right now, and they've got an offensive line that has kept him injury-free the last 2 years.
Well, you would think. Jake Fromm has played 30 games now. 29 games, and he's not missed a game yet. You would think maybe it would be possible that he could miss the game.
Yeah.
He's not exactly, he's durable. I would call him durable. Yeah. And he doesn't do dumb stuff like he did occasionally as a freshman. Running the ball.
He's gotten popped a few times, but I don't think he's gotten popped like Aaron Murray used to get popped.
Yeah, he's a durable guy. He's thicker than Aaron, taller than Aaron, has better hair than Aaron, if you're listening, Aaron.
One of our best listeners, Aaron Murray. Yeah.
Poor guy. This team can win the national championship. Alabama can win it. Clemson can win it. I guess Texas can win it. Oklahoma. Ohio State possibly. But there's not a lot of other teams.
Right.
And so my number one thing at spring practice and fall practice is I go and look at the offensive line Can this win? Can this offensive line win the SEC? And at Georgia, there is no question it can win the SEC.
It did 2 years ago, and I think the offensive line is
And
better now than it was.
So it really does. It seems to me like, and the conference, is it Georgia, Bama, and then LSU, and probably after that, then Florida and then
Auburn.
Yeah, but Auburn,
they're not going to win a
They
championship.
can't win the conference. I don't think
Florida can either.
I don't think so either.
Yeah.
But
it's Georgia or LSU. Georgia and Alabama, maybe LSU.
Yeah, when
maybe
I saw
LSU.
someone rank them that high, I was like, well, now wait a second now. Maybe, but LSU truthfully should be in the same position as Georgia and Alabama.
They still have the same quarterback they did from last year.
They should, but they've not recruited as well as Georgia and Alabama has. There's been very few programs that have. Actually, no one has the last 3 years. And now we're into that three. Now we're at the point where those 3 years matter. Clemson needed Trevor. If they didn't have Trevor,
well, I don't know.
It'd have been tough.
Well, they would have gone after Justin Fields, and that's a whole different thing.
They needed a spectacular quarterback. Clemson hasn't recruited like Alabama and Georgia have, and Ohio State had, but then this past year it was okay, and they switched their head coach. I think, to me, you've got 3 programs: Georgia, Alabama, Clemson. Georgia's on the outside looking in because they've not won the national championship. Everybody's on Clemson's jock now because they just won it. Alabama is getting credit for winning however many that they've gotten. It's those 3 in terms of talent. I think outside of those 3, Ohio State, Oklahoma, Texas are in this conversation. And then probably after that, or maybe with that group, it's slightly below it, is LSU and Florida. I'm talking nationally. I don't know that Washington does not have what these other schools have. If we were to fly across the country and watch UW practice, it wouldn't look like Georgia.
No.
It would at quarterback,
but
it wouldn't everywhere else.
It'll be interesting to see what Oklahoma does. I do think Jalen Hurts is a good quarterback.
That hurts them, though. See, that's why I would not put them in the category with Georgia, Clemson, and Alabama.
I think their defense is still trash.
By the way, man, and this is not a hot take, but this is just if I'm ranking guys in order specifically that I would want at quarterback, I would go Trevor first, then Fromm, and then Tua. Now, I know that sounds crazy. But the reason why I say that is, whereas Tua is more gifted as a playmaker, I guess you could say, I can't get over what I saw on the field in Atlanta when they beat him senselessly, Georgia, and then what I saw with Clemson kind of got after him. Tua, with guys in his face, just like any other quarterback, really suffers. And I didn't think I would ever say this, but I would take Jake Fromm over Tua.
Tua makes more, how do I say it, like, I don't want to say game-changing errors, but he did against Clemson.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
And that's one of the things it was that one route.
That
he wasn't
changed
looking anywhere else.
the game, man.
And that was early on. But it was so weird because you're like, what is he doing? But he looked at that one route. That's where he was going pre-snap, and he threw it, and the guy broke on
and
it.
Hear me out on this. I don't know, we've gotten on a tangent here, but
that's riding home.
Yeah. But Georgia didn't rush the passer last year very well. I know whose ass they got after, though, was Tua. And that was Ledbetter, who is not a pass rusher, and DeAndre Walker, who is a better pass rusher than most people.
And if you remember...
what happens when Nolan Smith is out there? What happens when you've got...
Jermaine Johnson, too.
Well, Jermaine Johnson should really be able to rush the passer.
He's a specialist.
That's what he should do. So what happens when you've got those guys out there on 3rd and 7 or whatever? I think they do match up perfectly fine with Alabama. And that's the question is, will this be a different team when they in theory inevitably show down against one another? Jake Fromm has played well against Alabama, generally speaking.
And that's a good point because it does seem like when they really try to rush the passer and get after the quarterback, like they sacked Baker Mayfield 3 times, Ledbetter, Tyler Clark, DeAndre Walker, they all sacked him. They sacked Tua a number of times in the national championship game, and then again, when they really, really want to, they can. But now that they have guys like Britton Cox, Adam Anderson, Nolan Smith, Jermaine Johnson off the edge.
Well, and if they match
so
up,
much they can do.
If they match up with Clemson in the semis or in the final, maybe you do match up slightly better. I don't know. You're gonna have to get after Trevor, and he's a lot slipperier than people realize because he's very long and can get around the corner. He, like Jake Fromm, did some dumb things running with the ball as a freshman and lived to survive. But this is about the guys in the trenches. I don't think Georgia's unbelievable like Alabama and Clemson were last year, but Alabama and Clemson last year both did get beat up at times. Clemson beat up Alabama, and a lot of people ran on. I mean, South Carolina did some damage to Clemson. People just straight up ran on Clemson. So you, as a defensive line, got to hold on. It's the offensive lines that really, really do matter. And Georgia's got the best one in the country, and it's time for them to
do it.
To do it, for lack of a better term.
Real quick, again, it was just one practice, first practice of the spring.
It's a lot to draw from.
But I do think this Georgia team is better in 2019 than they were last year.
Now, why?
I think they're more experienced. I think those guys in that 2017 class,
they were old.
They're juniors now.
Oh, the 2017 class, not the 2017 team.
Right. Even with the loss of DeAndre Baker, I do think that it's a more veteran group with still a lot of young talent. A junior quarterback. You still have DeAndre Swift. You still have, and again, the offensive line has gotten better the past 2 years. I think they're better this year than they were last year. I'm not sure this team is better than the 2017 team, but they also had the leadership, the Roquan, Sony, Nick.
They don't have a Roquan.
Carter.
They do have something that could approach Sony and Nick, I think, if Zamir is what. I saw Zamir today, and I mean, Zamir, man, this guy, he, I just hope for Zamir that he has the ability to play in a way that he's not, that he can play without worrying about the knee.
Well, he's probably the biggest question mark on the team right now.
I think so. I think he is.
And I'm not sure the people listening really know how much a healthy Zamir White can really change a game.
He'd be better
even as a sophomore for this team.
He would be better than DeAndre Swift.
If both at 100%, and you said that for years.
I think so, and that's not running Swift down.
No,
because Swift's really good.
You just have to watch the senior film of Zamir White and
or go to the game that I went to, and apparently that was just sort of a normal night for him. He only had 13 touches and had more than 200 yards of offense.
Georgia's sitting on a special player.
But is he the same as he was? I don't want to make it more than it really is. And but guys,
he can still rush for 1,000 yards.
This guy, I mean, I don't know him as well as you sort of know Thomas Brown. Thomas recovered from an ACL. He seemed fine. Todd Gurley has played pretty well in the NFL.
Nick Chubb's leg went backwards.
Yeah, that was horrible. I was right there for that. And in 2016, Nick was a heck of a running back, but it was even better in 2017. But
I think Zamir White can be still a really good player for Georgia, maybe rush for 1,000 yards. I don't know if he can be senior at, what was the high school? Lux?
It was at Scotland High School.
I don't know if we'll ever see senior Scotland High School running back Zamir White.
I'm not sure we won't. I just think you have to have that dose of reality with him. But guys what Zamir will have the ability to do, and Swift will have the ability to do, and Harrion and Cook, I mean, they don't have chumps back there. I mean, Harrion is a really, really hard runner, and he's their number 3. Now, he'll probably come in as the 2 this spring, and none of these guys all have egos, and they want to be good. And in the fall, what we don't see in the spring, of course, is we don't know what the new guys will be like, the new running back from Florida.
Kenny
McIntosh. What you've got there is he someone that is, not spectacular on film, but then he suddenly gets in the SEC and you're like, wait a second, so we don't know.
If he plays over a lot of those guys you just mentioned, then he's pretty damn good.
Harrion, I will say this, is not anywhere close to being prototypical. And he's been a 4-year grinder.
I mean, it's crazy. I mean, he got a lot of carries against North Carolina.
Yeah. And so there's different ways to prepare dinner. Yeah. Georgia has its particular way of preparing dinner. But they can win with Jake Fromm being the guy too. In fact, against Alabama last year and the year before, he had to really play well. He really played well against Oklahoma, but I think he really played well in the 18 SEC championship game in a way that he didn't play so well against in the Sugar Bowl. He played fine in the Sugar Bowl, but I thought he really played well in the SEC championship game. And sometimes the free throws aren't going in, and sometimes you need to do what you got to do to win. And the way that you want to play isn't the way that they can win. For Georgia, they need to have more than one way to win. That they typically win a particular way is great, but they need to be able to be diverse. We know they can run the ball.
Be the Patriots. Run when you can.
They didn't run well against Texas because they had a hard time running against Texas. They didn't run well against LSU because they didn't run it.
Yeah.
I think they need to, and I think everyone agrees, I think that they have a quarterback that's more than capable of passing for them to win. They have the running backs, but when they get confronted with elite teams, not Vanderbilt or even Missouri or maybe not even Florida, but when they get confronted with the Clemson's, Alabamas of the world, and maybe someone will become a lot better in the Big 12 that we don't know of, can they win doing, hitting backhands?
Well, the thing, if you look the past 2 years, there's only been a handful of games where they faced adversity and won. You had Notre Dame, Florida last year, Auburn,
Oklahoma.
But
other
than that, they lose or they kick your ass.
Yeah, they're too good now to they've lost 5 games in 2 years, right? Is that right? So one was on the last play of the game.
2 to Alabama, 1 to Texas, 1 to LSU, 1 to Auburn.
All right, so 2 were on the last play of the game to Alabama.
Yeah.
One was just a non-show up against Texas, and then LSU and Auburn. They kind of they played well, and then they got landslided on them.
Yeah.
So, Alabama's been blown out lately. Clemson has not. Clemson did not get blown out last year, but they were solidly beaten in 2017 for sure. You can lose if you play someone good, but for Georgia, it's not. I wouldn't get worked up about if they lose a game, but they need to surge into November and December. They probably won't lose before November. I find it hard to believe.
And even with this schedule, if they lose one regular season game,
it doesn't matter.
Win the East and win the SEC championship, they're in.
If you are not Clemson in the ACC, you need to go undefeated. If you're Clemson, you get them all again. If you're Ohio State, I don't know. Ohio State's not exactly been given a lot of mulligans lately.
Clemson does. If Clemson would have lost to Syracuse, I just don't think I don't think it would have mattered.
It wouldn't have mattered.
That would have been their mulligan, and they get it.
It wouldn't have mattered unless Georgia had beaten Alabama, which didn't happen. So, it's just the world that we live in. The Big 12 is essentially 2 teams now, which is Oklahoma and Texas. For a long time, it wasn't anything but one team.
Right.
So you live in the world you live in. Georgia, though, gets the benefit of the doubt with a loss. So does Alabama, and to some degree, so does LSU and perhaps the Gators. But you got to win the conference, it looks like. Everybody except Alabama has to win their conference. So the rules are different for different teams.
There's all the SEC hate out there and all that, but a one-loss SEC champion should probably get in the playoff every single year. One-loss SEC champ gets in every year.
I would think a 2-loss SEC champion would get in, but we've certainly gone way across the spectrum here for almost 30 minents into what was
if you're
usually
still
a 10-minute
listening to
thing.
This, thank you.
Well, people listen, but
Aaron Murray, yeah.
I think just looking at it, and we'll have to revisit it in the fall, because I do want to see, is Trayvon Walker a third-string guy when he gets here or a second-string guy when he gets here?
He's got experienced guys in front of him.
In order for him to start, he's going to have to beat out Tyler Clark or
you got Malik Herring there.
I mean, there's just a lot of guys.
And guys older than him that are still trying to find their way and still trying to break
and then
rotation.
do you want to get, if you want to get your best 11 on the field, does that mean that you play Nolan Smith as a defensive end occasionally?
I think you'll see Nolan Smith and Jermaine Johnson.
Jermaine Johnson, I don't know what he is. When I watched him play, he was a defensive lineman. And in this league, is he a defensive lineman or is he a linebacker?
Well, if it's 3rd and long, you could have.
You got to have him on the
But you could put him at DN,
That's
put Nolan Smith and Brenton Cox at outside linebacker, and then just blitz. Do whatever you need.
Well, I'll say this, man. Georgia, when you had Charles Grant and Quentin Moses, rest in peace, back in the day, you were going to get sacked.
I still remember Charles Johnson, I think, against Virginia Tech, his last game.
He just killed him.
I mean, almost every play, he was tackling a guy in the backfield or getting a sack. I mean,
they in 2005, 2004, 2003 with Pollock, that time they really had pass rushers. John Fabris was a very good pass rushing developer and coach.
And Jonathan Sullivan was picked like 6th in the draft after.
Yeah, I mean that's the Saints' problem.
They produced him. Yeah,
sounds like, but. When you globally look at it, they've got all the pieces. It would be interesting to go to Alabama practice or to a Clemson practice or to Ohio State practice, whereas the bodies may all look the same. And we'll get off of this, but I'd have no doubt Alabama always will have a good offensive line. What is Clemson's situation on the offensive line? Because there was a couple of guys at least.
They lost Mitch Hyatt. Tremaine Ankrum, is he still there? Did he graduate?
I'm not sure.
I feel like he's been there for 5-6 years now. But if he's there, he's a senior.
Yeah.
And
but they've done a good job of developing linemen because they've not over-recruited there.
I don't think Clemson's beat out Sam Pittman for one guy in 3 years. I mean, so they're not recruiting at the same level as Sam Pittman, but no one's recruiting like Sam Pittman.
Let's close like this, though. With what you just said, that's what I would be, if you want to say worried about. Georgia has been crashing on the wave. The waves have crashed on the beach for everyone else, but now the wave has developed. A lot of the kids in this program have now been recruited by Kirby. This is totally Kirby's team, essentially now. I don't think there's anyone left because Ledbetter and them were recruited by Mark. How long does it take for the 3 cycles to crash onto the beach? That's the question.
The number 1 recruiting class is 2018, right?
Correct.
So, by logic, 2020, when those guys are juniors, should be the year. But let's not forget, 2017 was, at the time, Georgia's best recruiting class on paper.
Yes.
And those guys are going to be juniors this year.
And they were not as good as the 2 that have followed them.
Right.
So it is just like investing. If you get it ahead of time, you're fine. But if you're trying to make it up right at the end, it ain't going to work. And they have been investing, so to speak, by recruiting these players, signing them, getting them into the program. And now you have not just a solid base, but you do have a few freaks out there. And, guys like Nolan Smith, guys like Zamir White, they've never played at Georgia. Yeah. And those 2 guys right there could be total. And Trayvon Walker, too, to some degree.
Well, the way I look at it is this is probably the first team in a long time where Kirby or whoever doesn't have to rely on true freshmen to come in and make an impact. If true freshmen are playing, it's either they're kicking someone's ass or they earned it, and they are really, really, really good. But it's not like you have to have
Tyson Campbell come in and start.
Come in and start, or someone like that. You don't need a true freshman to come in and play. If he does, it's great. But now they've built quality depth across.
Yeah, the depth is insane, frankly, and that's the part. To me, Clemson beat Alabama with their best 22 were better than Alabama's best 22 that night.
If there was one position where they did need to recruit someone to come and be like, you need to be ready to play, it's receiver. And they got 2.
And they did that.
Really, really good ones. 3 good ones, but 2 who are just...
2 who should be exceptional.
Yes. Who will play. Don Blaylock and George Pickens, if he...
And Holloman has really developed big
Tyler
time.
Simmons is still insanely
Tyler
fast.
Simmons plays a lot of plays. He doesn't catch the ball a ton, but he plays a lot of downs.
Trey Blunt is a good blocker on the perimeter too. This will be a chance for him to.
But guys like Harris Jackson who are super fast. Yeah. They're going to have to fight their way onto the field, and that's not going to be easy.
Real quick, punt return, kick returner with Miko gone.
Yeah, I
We haven't
mean,
hit on that, but
Zamir would be a good kick return guy.
yeah.
But we're still unknown there in some ways. You would think George Pickens would be.
Curious, I think, would be.
Kyrus Jackson
solid
would
there.
be a very good kick
Is there
return
anyone
guy.
in the secondary who you think might be able to return a kick or two? They got some speed.
What about Demetrius though? As a kick return guy,
I wouldn't trust him punt return, but kick return is different.
Return has really changed because people just there's a lot of fair catches and the kids are getting into the end zone.
Yeah.
Punt return, on the other hand,
I don't think Demetrius has the ball skills and yeah.
Well, you don't want him to get hit.
Yeah.
But Mecole was a game changer back there.
Yeah.
No question.
Be interesting to see what happens there. Kyrus Jackson is a prime candidate if he continues to develop how we thought he would.
Very
at
fast.
high school. Yes,
I mean, he's very fast. But they have guys. I don't know if there's a weapon yet, but we'll see. And then punting needs to be more consistent.
Yeah.
So
he can boom it. He's got to figure out where it's going.
Right, and that was an important part of the 2017 team.
There were a few times where he did get the ball down on the 1 yard line, but there are also times where all you need to do is punt it 20 yards, and he just airmails it in there. So still plenty of time to get that together. But overall,
if you want to find issues with Georgia, you can find them.
Yeah,
but that's sort of normal.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people would kill to have the skill players, and murder would be totally on the table for the offensive line to get that offensive line, because Georgia's offensive line is as good as it gets.
They should be able to run on everyone. LSU, Auburn, Alabama, they should be able to run.
You
on
should
everyone
certainly be able to do that in the second half against anyone. I don't care who they're playing,
right.
Alabama, Clemson, or whoever is this year's version of Clemson's
DeAndre Swift
line.
And possibly a healthy Zamir White behind that,
or
line,
Brian Herrien.
Or Brian Herrien. I mean that. It shouldn't be stopped. It shouldn't be.
We say that, but I mean, if a defense is fresh in the second half, you're going to have a harder time.
Yeah.
But again, that's why you have a game plan and stick to it, and continue to run. All right.
Long edition.
Extended edition of Riding Home. Thanks to Matt DeBary. Check out dawgpost.com, dawgpost.com. Join us on Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, and Facebook. We are all over the social media spectrum, but we want to see you over at Dawgpost, dawgpost.com. Thanks for joining us again.